Hello. Welcome to another episode of sorry, my face is just really itchy. That's a bit better. Get the hair in my eyes. Welcome to another episode of Musings with Wolf. I'm Wolf, and these are my musings. Today I'm going to be talking about reading the Bhagavad-Gita, which is something I did probably now a handful of years ago. And I read it because everyone told me to read it, and I just thought, okay, so everyone's telling me, maybe there's some wisdom I can dissect, as I'm not a Hindu myself. I was raised in the West, as you can probably tell from my accent, my bluey green eyes, although I know you get, actually here's an interesting fact. So they reckon that the first blue-eyed gene was a genetic mutation in Iran, and apparently, I don't know, I haven't researched this. This is just a fireside conversation I've had with someone or whatever. Not literally by a fire, I don't think it was. There's apparently a genetic mutation in Irania, and apparently the word Aryan comes from Iranian, and the word Caucasus comes from Caucasian, as in the Caucasus Mountains. So if you have blue eyes, at some point you're in the Middle East. So that Westerners aren't actually from the West. Interesting. That's not what I'm talking about today. Yeah. What I'm talking about is my experience of reading the Bhagavad-Gita. And I read it because everyone told me I should read it. And I'm still practicing the Dharma, the teachings of the Buddha. And I'm not a big reader. I'm more of a practical kind of person. I just try to be kind, try to be present every day in my life by anchoring myself in sensations within the body and the breath, so my ego isn't taking me on a crazy ride, which it often does, like it does for everybody. But I remember John Lennon saying, I believe in peace and love. And although I'm not always the most peaceful, loving guy, I'm trying to be that guy. And that message really sticks with me because anything worthwhile takes effort, and that includes being peaceful and loving. It's probably the biggest battle, but it's a battle that, once you start, the universe gives you support in very unexpected ways. Anyway, I'm going on a tangent, which a young wolf is known to do. So yeah, I read the Bhagavad-Gita because I practiced Dharma, and I also read the Tao Te Ching, and I got a lot of wisdom from that at the time. And I just thought, so Hindus believe in ahimsa, non-violence. I very much like Indian culture. I've always really appreciated Indian culture and vegetarianism, and I know India's a vast place and there's all sorts going on there, but specifically Hindu culture, so I thought I'd give it a read. And anyway, I read it a handful of years ago, and I was like, this is about a war. And I'm a guy who likes, I don't really like music. I can hear a song and be like, oh yeah, that's good. But music doesn't really have any meaning these days. It's just, the soul's gone. It's just for, at best, entertainment. At worst, yeah. And I look into things, I read lyrics, and I just took the Bhagavad-Gita as it was, and so I didn't really appreciate it. I was like, it's about a war, and then he meets God, a chariot, and I was like, what? And then several years later, I think it was my dad I was talking to, and he goes, and he's a bit different to me. I love my dad to pieces. But he's into like martial arts and stuff, whereas everyone's different to everyone. I don't mean that we're not, to be honest, we're very similar, but in the sense of he might read a book on martial kind of stuff. Martial meaning martial Mars, the god of war. So he might get something from that I usually wouldn't. Was it my dad? I can't remember, but I think it was. And he said, "Oh yeah, but the chariot's about like the human body, and the horses are like the senses." I was like, "Oh." And then I thought about it, and I was like, "Freaking yeah, that's a really good book." If it's not about a legitimate war, if it's about how the body is, if you're familiar with the Gita, and if you're not actually, it's a chariot, and this fellow's going to war. I can't remember his name now, and the chariot's pulling him to the different battles. And sorry, I should have done a bit of research for this, because I literally read this book like 5 years ago. And God pretty much comes by his side, and he's saying like, go blind, and I might be getting this wrong, but basically the senses are pulling the chariot everywhere, and you've got to learn to just like let God take over your chariot, which is like, become God conscious, or whatever terminology you use, which in my books is just be loving, be a God conscious, or nirvana is just being like super heightened awareness and being a very, very unconditional, loving person. So yeah, the Bhagavad Gita for a Westerner, don't take it literally. And books, in my opinion, just books are books, they're not the destination, they're the signpost to the destination. So, people interpret some books and they think it condones, they take it as a holy book and it condones extreme acts of violence because they've interpreted it in a certain way. Not even holy books, just any book, media really influences us. Media, books, scriptures, whatever. So take it as a book. If you look at it as the senses, I think it's amazing. But I haven't really read it in a very long time, so as you can tell. So yeah, that was my point on the Bhagavad Gita as a Westerner. If you want to know some other books I really recommend, is I don't really read these days, but at the time when I was searching for a spiritual direction and practice, Stephen Batchelor, Buddhism Without Belief. The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle, and A New Earth. Again, they might not impact you the same way as they once did, but at the time they really had a profound impact. And I really like the book Be Here Now by Ramdas, but I'm too keen on the illustrations and artwork. I really like the preface, the story about how he got into his spiritual practice. Because he tells the story about how he was a really good, I think it's psychologist. He would, be doing, I don't want to censor my video, but, things with multiple people that wasn't so, some people, find it cool, some people don't. Taking drugs, being on yachts. He'd sit at the head of the table and people would look at him and say, this guy knows what he's doing. And he'd sit there like, I know what I'm doing. I have myself sorted out. And on the inside, he was like, this is a facade. I'm so lost. I don't have a clue. And he's so brutally honest in that book. And it's just interesting watching him evolve from that person to someone who pursues spirituality and such. So there's some good books if you're looking for a spiritual read. I don't have time to read anymore. I've got a family and all this, but I love to read. Anyway, going on a bit of a tangent. So that was Musings with Wolf, and that was how to read a Bhagavad Gita as a Westerner. I realised I could have said what I needed to say in like minute, but it is what it is. Alright, ahimsa, may all beings be happy, peaceful, and liberated. And also, if you're new to the channel, I don't just cover spiritual topics, I just talk about whatever interests me on the day. So there you go. Alright, goodbye my friends.